example, in a warehouse, when you want to put things from the shelf into the container for shipping, you cannot drop things. That's just not acceptable. In general, people, they don't always value their sense of touch a lot. Of course, vision and hearing, there has been a lot of research, a lot of work on vision and hearing. But when you want to act in the real world, then it becomes very clear that for a lot of challenging tasks, or even not so challenging tasks, like just taking things from the shelf, the sense of touch is crucial. So that robots can be employed in everyday tasks like households, they have to become a lot cheaper. A lot of people come to Japan because they like anime, manga. I came for the robots. When it comes to making robots, Japan is an amazing place.
How do you see like human and robot interactions in 5 years, 5 to 10 years?
So,
Alex, thank you for being here with us today. First question, who is Alex and what got you into robotics?
yes, hi. So my name is Alex. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of XELA Robotics. We started the company around 2018. And yeah, originally I'm from Austria, and then I moved to Japan in 2011. I really like it here, especially for the robots. And so, why robotics? I think the world is facing serious challenges, and I think robotics could be one of the solutions to those. But at the same time, there's certain risk to robots, and so I think it's better to be involved. And yeah, basically that's it.
What solutions do you feel like robotics can bring, and what are the risks you're talking about? There's a risk there. Like, how do you feel like robotics could be a solution, and which risks is it taking care of?
So a lot of countries, and also Japan, they are facing a labor shortage. And because of that, it's really hard to find people, which maybe you know very well. And and there are a lot of jobs which people actually don't want to do, right? Like these repetitive jobs in warehouses, factories. And so robots could be a solution, but robots are still very limited in what they can do, like in adapting to new tasks. And so that's where we are coming in, where we are trying to find solutions.
So I guess let's just go right into it. Like XELA Robotics, like what got you to start XELA Robotics? Like what's the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so we are a spin-off from Waseda University. Um, at Waseda University, we developed a lot of technology, and then we were also exhibiting it at various conferences like IRX, Robodex, and so on. And then especially the tactile sensors that we are developing, we got a lot of interest from a lot of companies, and they wanted to buy it. And back then, we didn't even have the company yet. So we started a company, and right away we had sales, and people really liked it, and the company has been growing ever since.
You mentioned what's the tactile
Tactile sensors?
tactile sensors? Yeah.
Yes. So we are making tactile sensors. So they are basically skin sensors, especially for robot fingertips. So we make the tactile sensors, we integrate them into robot hands and grippers. We also make the software. So the sensors, they measure three-axis forces. So there are a lot of small points, and each individual point is like a small joystick. It measures not only the pressure, but also the direction of force. The sensors are very sensitive, they're very robust, um, they are very, they don't need a lot of wires. So if, for example, in one robot hand, we have 368 sensing points. They all measure three-axis forces. So then you would have a lot of cables, and that would be very difficult. But in our case, all the cable management is very good, and then you can get all this information very fast, very reliable, and that's tactile sensors.
What do those tactile sensors? Which problem do they solve? Basically, why do you need them?
So, for example, when you want to grasp something like this item, and the robot doesn't know what it is, then the robot can grasp it. He can detect the robot can detect the hardness, the weight. Then the robot can adjust the grasping force. When the robot lifts it and it slightly starts slipping, then you can detect the slip. And even before lifting, or just by lifting it a little bit, you can already know, is this a good grasp or not a good grasp. And then, for example, in a warehouse, when you want to put things from the shelf into the container for shipping, you cannot drop things. That's just not acceptable. And with tactile sensors, you eliminate this problem. Another application would be, for example, charging of EVs, so automatic charging. And when you want to insert the plug into the socket, and with vision, there could be slight misalignments. But with tactile sensing, you can measure those and then avoid damaging the plug.
So basically, you don't have to be as precise because if you just rely on computer vision, you have
Y-
to be extremely precise, and one little change will basically, like, you change slightly the position or the product,
Yeah,
there will be an
exactly.
issue.
And so vision is very difficult because in that case the angle is it's hard to look exactly at the insertion point, and humans do it similarly, right? When you're inserting a USB, you don't look very close, and you just use your fingers and you insert it, and then there's no problem.
Mm,
And then with vision alone, the problem could be very difficult, and once you add the tactile sensors, the problem suddenly becomes very easy.
makes sense. Is it also very much used like for humanoid robots, for example?
So our first applications, they're more like factories, warehouses, or delicate fruit picking. But in the future, we also want to use them for humanoid robots. So we already have multi-fingered hands, so humanoid hands. And in the future, we want to use them, for example, for entertainment, cooking, cleaning, and these kind of things. And then also other applications like prosthetic devices. But first, we focus on applications like I mentioned before, warehouses.
What was the biggest challenge you faced so far to get to where you are with XELA Robotics?
So in the beginning, when we started in 2018, we had a very small team. So everybody had a lot of heads and had to do a lot of different things. But then recently we got this investment, and we have been growing the team a lot. And so now people can focus more on one field, like for example, sales. And I think that makes life much easier also for me. And so we're improving in this sense, I think.
Like, what problem does XELA Robotics solve exactly in robotics? Is it just allowing to be more and more precise into the handling? Is that the main problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah. So, for example, in the warehouse, it's like this picking. In the factory, it would be also assembly. Just when you want to screw in something, and then so when you're grasping the screwdriver and you're not perfectly aligned, you would have problems, and you also don't know how strong you're screwing. Fruit picking, for example, when you pick the fruit, you don't want to damage it. Nobody wants to buy a tomato which is damaged. You can also sort, for example, the fruits. So when you pick the fruit, you can detect again the weight, the hardness that relates to ripeness, and then you can automate these kind of things.
Nice. So there's a lot of applications it will kind of be used for when, I guess, it's sensitive objects, basically, right? Like fragile.
Yes, and we are not working on vision, but we are working together with vision companies and to provide complete solutions. So in the beginning, we only made the tactile sensors, but now we're working together with partners also and with other companies to provide more complete solutions. So we not only make the tactile sensors, we also integrate them into various robot hands and grippers. We don't make the grippers. We buy different grippers. We also customize the sensors for different grippers according to the customer requirements. Then we also make the tactile AI software. So, for example, to detect the weight, for example, to detect slip. Then we integrate it in bigger solutions with vision, with robot arms for control to solve all kind of robotic problems.
Makes sense. I feel like every company at some point will need that kind of
I
solution.
I I think for a lot of problems, it's really a good solution. In general, people they don't always value their sense of touch a lot. Of course, vision and hearing. There has been a lot of research, a lot of work on vision and hearing. But when you want to act in the real world, then it becomes very fast, very clear that for a lot of challenging tasks, or even not so challenging tasks, like just taking things from the shelf, the sense of touch is crucial.
It gives a lot more, I guess, flexibility as well around
Yes,
everything, right?
the robot can be adapt. For example, in a warehouse, in the Amazon warehouse, there are so many different items. You cannot pre-program the robot for each task. And with the tactile sense, the robot just learns, adapts to new objects automatically without a lot of work.
Makes sense. Like, what are the current problems you're facing, like from a tech perspective?
So we do develop. We always improve our product. We make it faster. We make it even more sensitive. We also increase the spatial density, for example. So now every sensor is like 4 by 4 millimeters. We already have the new version of the sensor that will be 2 by 2 millimeters. So the spatial density will be 4 times higher. Um, we do a lot of work on the software side. Um, we 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 made a lot of progress recently on the software side. We just had an exhibition last week, for example, at Robodex, where we exhibited our improved slip detection, our improved weight detection, and yeah, we are really going towards this complete solutions.
So you're basically trying to make it, I guess, smaller, more compact all the time, faster, the
Yeah,
rate
that's
from the
that's on the hardware
sensors.
side, and on the software side, we are trying to make it more easy to use.
Like the
In
integration, you mean? Or
Yeah, like in the beginning, our customers they still had to develop a lot of software on their own, and they still have to some extent. But of course, the more software we provide, the easier it is for the customer to use it. And then it should be a ready to use solution, right? A lot of our customers are tech companies and they have the capability to develop their own software. But some other companies, they cannot or don't want to do that. And it would save them a lot of time if they can just get a complete solution, right?
like what kind of what what are your biggest customers right now that are using your solutions?
We do have a lot of customers. We have more than 50 customers. 70% of them are overseas currently. Um, they don't always want us to tell their names
Okay,
because it's very cutting edge. I had to sign a lot of NDAs.
interesting.
I also always ask the customer, how do you use the sensor, of course? And they don't always want to tell me as well because it's their secret, right?
So basically, it's their data, which makes it harder for you guys to create custom software as well.
Um, well, so now the sensors are not really connected to the cloud yet, but in the future we also want to connect the sensors to the cloud, which would have benefits for the customers as well, because then we can provide better software for them. We get more data, then we can provide better software with better machine learning models. But that's still in progress.
Like you mentioned, most of those customers are overseas. How is the Japan market so far treating you guys?
We also have a lot. We also have very big customers in Japan, and the Japanese market is also very good. It's of course a little bit different. So as you know, we just recently hired a dedicated salesperson for the Japanese market.
Mm, are you okay to go more in depth around that, or you wanna?
Why Japanese customers are different?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well, so for one, my Japanese is not excellent.
Mm.
So, but now with the dedicated salesperson that is a Japanese, language is not an issue anymore.
I mean, the language barrier is definitely a challenge. What are the main challenges as you're a CEO, you just double the size of your company. Like,
Mhm.
can you give me a little bit like insights on like how challenging is it?
Yeah. So we received an investment last year, and we were like 10 people. Then within 3 months, we doubled the size to around 20 people now. So that was challenging. It was challenging to find people. It was we had to onboard those people. I think we found excellent people, and so that was one of the challenges. And then also another challenge is we have a lot of demand from customers, which is very good, of course. And so to keep up with the demand, we also need more people. So we have been hiring a lot of people related to product development, but also now production, for example, sales, this kind of role, business side. Um, so those were some of the challenges.
What kind of people are you looking for right now? Because one of our goals is to facilitate people reaching out to you in the talent pool. Like, what kind of people are you looking for?
Yeah, so we are always looking for example, good software developers. So both closer to the hardware side, like embedded software, but also, especially now, maybe more like machine learning, robot control. Um, we also look for people that are on the hardware side, like that can do, for example, both PCB design, but also CAD design.
Electrical and mechanical.
Electrical and mechanical design, yes. Um, We also look for people on the business side, so like sales. We also look for people like production, like I mentioned before. So I think those are some of the roles.
Nice. So you guys are now around 20-ish people.
Yes,
What's the goal by the end of 2025 in terms of headcounts?
it should be around 30, 35.
Okay, going very fast, basically.
Yes, it's going fast, I think.
How do you manage to build, while improving the product? You also have to find time to, I guess, develop a culture in the company. How do you find time to manage both?
Yeah, I think our company is very international. So, of course, we have Japanese people, but we also have a lot of people from overseas. We have people from the US, a lot of people from Europe, all over Asia. And I think we are not a typical Japanese company. Um, we, for example, for me, the most important is not how much time you spend in the office, but how much outcome you have.
Mm,
So double the time in the office doesn't mean that you're more productive. And so in in this sense, I think we are not very traditional. And I think people are happy to work for Zella. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I think we have a good working environment. And
mm. I mean, I work with several startups here, and the ones that have usually the highest productivity are the ones that has like this discretionary system where it's like you do your job regardless of how many hours, and so you get your KPIs and your targets, and the management doesn't care if you spend 8 hours in the office or 5 or 6, and it seems to work really, really well in
yes, yes.
general.
And also telework is okay. So in our case, we require people to spend some time in the office because it's I think it's still easier to exchange opinions and work together. And we also a hardware company, right? So sometimes you just need to work with the robot.
Mm.
But then you don't always need to be in the office. And
Mm.
as you said, like if you achieve your goals, if you achieve your amazing goals in 1 hour, then that's it.
'Cause I feel like that's sometimes a trap for a lot of people. It's like if they, they smash their work in an hour, the assumption from management will be, well, oh, well, we can give him more work. It's too easy for him. And so it's not always rewarding in a lot of companies to do, very efficient work, right?
Yes, but I really think, and I think we agree on that, the outcome is much, much more important than spending 40 plus or I don't know, 80 hours in the office. I don't know what's common for other companies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's the biggest challenge in terms of like the soft skills that you're looking for? Because you guys are a startup. I mean, the people that you have, they probably are amazing at adapting because the growth, the solution that you have to find, like what kind of people beside the
Yes.
hard skills are you looking for?
So we are a startup, so we are different than a big company. So as you said, people have to be more adaptive, also more independent. I cannot micromanagement every task. I don't want to micromanagement every task. We give you a big outline. That's the problem, and then the more independent you are, the better for me. If you come up with creative solutions that I never thought of, or even problems that I didn't think of, and then I'm very happy. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for.
What's the ratio in the company so far between Japanese and foreigners?
I think it's like maybe again 70-30.
Okay. 70 foreigners, 30 Japanese.
Yes, exactly.
Nice, interesting. And can you walk us maybe through for the people that consider applying, like what is the interview process like? Because that's also another issue a lot of companies have is like super long, tedious interview processes. Like we worked with you and it was very quick and smooth, but maybe you
Yes,
can
yes.
share.
You know, and you can confirm. No, I so we have after we check the CV, we have an interview, then we get to know you, we meet you, then basically if everything is good, then we can start a trial period, which is usually around 3 months, but
Yeah,
maybe it also depends on the position, and then we can provide the permanent contract.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty typical for a lot of startups out there. Um, I guess from a little bit more broad here because we have a lot of junior engineers looking, at the podcast. Like, what kind of advice would you give to, junior robotics engineers? What kind of skills should they develop? Because I think right now with the whole Chat GPT, the whole LM AI moving forward so fast, it's like very daunting to know what should I learn, like what skills should I really deep dive into. Like, what kind of advice would you give to people?
So it's in our case, we also look for people that maybe have some experience with robotics. So, but that's specific to us maybe. So, of course, it's good if you have machine learning experience and also robotics experience. On the hardware side, for example, we look for people that can do both mechanical and electrical engineering, like I mentioned before. So you don't have to be good at everything,
Mm,
but like certain combinations, they're very helpful for us,
mm.
and maybe that's also true for other companies.
How can people showcase you that they are good at learning new skills? Because that's one thing, right? Like especially in the startup ecosystem, like most people never match fully a job description.
Hmm.
But like, how can a candidate impress you, showcasing their, I guess their curiosity and their ability to learn new skills on the spot? Like, how can they show you instead of just telling? Because everyone can say, "Oh, I'm a good learner," I'm curious. But how can they showcase that to you during an interview?
Well, if they prove that they did it in the past, if they, for example, a question during the interview could be like, when you faced a challenging situation, how did you approach it, right?
Mm.
And then there's not one right answer, but there's a lot of good ways how to solve this. And so if the candidate had a good approach in the past to solving difficult issues, then that would be a good thing.
Like problem solving skills, the ability to break it down in smaller steps. It's
Yes.
interesting. Another question a bit broader around robotics, like where do you see robotics in the next coming 10 years?
So I think it's a very exciting time for robotics, and I think that's not only my opinion. A lot of people would agree. Um, AI has made a lot of progress recently, but it has been mainly in the cyber world. And I think it's time for AI also to shine in the real world, so also robotics. And there will be a lot of progress, and the sky's the limit. I don't know where we will be in 10 years, but for sure we will be much more advanced than where we are now.
Are you overall like optimistic about where we go, or like,
I'm very optimistic. There has been so much going on,
hmm,
and it will be amazing times. People will be surprised. I think a couple of years people were really surprised by what happened with all these AI things, and people will be very surprised with what happening with robotics.
within your imagination, where do you see things like, okay, how do you see like human and robot interactions in 5 years, 5 to 10 years?
So if you look at sci-fi movies,
Yeah.
robots should be already around everywhere, but they're not, right? And so we're a little bit behind the schedule, but I think now is the time when robots will really approach a lot of fields. Maybe first it will be still industry because robots are still a little bit expensive, but then eventually they will be in our everyday environment. You already see them in restaurants, they will be in supermarkets, they will be in a lot of places. And it will become much more normal to see a robot around everywhere. And that could be exciting, I think.
Do you see any issues with like the workforce being replaced?
So luckily, countries like Japan, we have a labor shortage. So, and the kind of tasks that robots will do in the beginning, especially, are the kind of tasks that humans don't want to do. And every innovation kind of, in the beginning, when they invented cars or like this, some time ago, most people were working on farms. And then all this machinery came up and replaced people on farms. And then people said, like, okay, but what are all these people gonna do now, all the farmers? But then actually people move to better jobs, right? No, nobody wants to, not like the hard farm work, not a lot of people want to do it. And so I hope that it will lead to humans, being able to do nicer jobs instead of the tedious work that they're doing now.
More creative tasks,
More creative
basically.
tasks, right?
Yeah, hope so. Hope so as well. um, do you believe in AGI in 2025?
Um, it's challenging to say. I 2025 is a very short time frame. I personally, I wouldn't think so, but it also depends how. For some things, it's already there, right? I had some discussions with ChatGPT where I was like, wow, that's too clever. That's already a little bit scary, right? Like, where did that answer come from?
Mm,
So it and I mean, there's not one point when it will be here, right? It's a gradual process, and
mm,
it will be involved into more and more parts of our society, and
mm.
so it gradually also in 2025. But it's not like at least I don't think the big explosion is happening this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype. But you mentioned when you interact with ChatGPT, like sometimes feels so smart and a little bit scary. Like,
Yes.
why scary?
No, that was not my conversation, but I read this conversation when ChatGPT tried to convince a guy to break up with his wife because the ChatGPT said that it loves him more than his wife and it's better than his wife could be. And I where did it come from? I don't know. And
It is scary. It is scary and it's exciting at the same time, I guess. What's like, with the vision that you have of this fulfilling robotics future, what are the current bottlenecks? Like sensors, tactical sensors are one of them. What else is there like that we need to solve to get to that vision?
well, in general, so that robots can be employed on in everyday tasks like households, they have to become a lot cheaper. For now, it's still maybe you have your room at home, but to have a robot like a humanoid would still be prohibitively expensive, right?
Mm.
At the same time, there's still a lot of work still on the both on the hardware side, but also on the software side. Robots still have to become more clever, more adaptive to new tasks, and those are some of the issues that I see.
So it's kind of a gradual thing that we need to go through. Cost. I mean, cost is already it's getting cheaper and cheaper pretty fast, I guess.
It's getting cheaper. Definitely, the trajectory is going in the right way, but still, probably the two of you us couldn't afford a. I could make my own one, but like to buy one would be still very expensive.
Yeah, I bought a Roomba, and yeah, I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Not the best investment so far. Um, what's the next big breakthrough in robotics? Like, do you see anything that you're like, okay, when this happens, this is really gonna be significant?
So I think a lot of technologies are coming together now at the same time, like vision, tactile sensing, new actuation systems, a lot of software. And if you combine all those things together, then suddenly you could solve all these problems that you couldn't solve before. So I think it's a lot of small Lego pieces
Mm.
together that will solve these big problems.
Yeah, it feels that way. It feels like a lot of different things are moving in the same pace. And like again, for a junior engineer, like, what would you recommend? Because that's always a thing, right? People want to go in the most, I guess, exciting field and promising field, but there's so many options.
Yes, of course. Now AI is very big. It's a hype, and a lot of people want to do AI. But in order to make good robots, you need not only AI, you need also good embedded software engineers. You also need good just normal software, cloud software. There's a lot of different things that need to work together again. So not everybody has to do AI. And
Hmm. It's so hard to find embedded engineers, for example. Like so hard, like strong C++ developers, for example, super hard. So yeah, I can see that. If you could solve one problem in the world instantly, what would it be?
okay, I'm not sure really how to answer this question, but maybe stupidity. There's a lot of stupidity going around in the world, and in some ways maybe robotics AI could be helping. Um, maybe that would be too long for today this discussion, but somewhere there.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Um, I'm going through like more, I guess, rapid fire questions here, but like, what hobbies allow you to recover, from the stress and like, because I can imagine. what you're going through, you're learning a lot on the spot, right? You start the company, probably everything accelerated since you have, the funding. But like, how do you kind of take a step back and relax? What kind of hobbies?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, for example, I really liked to play with Lego. And somehow doing robotics is the same, but bigger and better. And you make amazing things. So my dad used to say that I don't really have a job, I just have a hobby. Building robots is kind of a cool hobby. So that's one part. But I also like to meet friends. I like to go out, dinner, drinks, things like that.
Nice, nice, nice. What's your? You've been in Japan for how long now?
Since 2011.
Okay, you've been here for a while. What's your favorite thing about Japan? Like, what keeps you here, basically?
For me, it's robots. I think a lot of people come to Japan because they like anime, manga. I came for the robots. That's the reason why I came. Um, of course, now China is, for example, by far the biggest market for robots. But when it comes to making robots, Japan is an amazing place. And of course, I like living here. It's a very comfortable environment. It's very nice to live in Japan.
Very safe, very calm. Do you think Japan can become like a bigger market than China at some point when it comes to robotics? Like,
I I mean, China is just a bigger country,
yeah.
but Japan also there's a lot of places where robots still can be employed. I've been visiting a lot of companies like truck companies, car companies, and you would have think that already everything is automated in this company, but actually there's still so much manual work. Like for example, when it comes to a truck, they don't produce 100 times the same truck. They produce the trucks exactly the order that they are being produced. A small truck, a big truck, a medium-sized truck, and there are a lot of customization options. So then when a truck gets produced, it gets dragged along a huge conveyor belt, and it's all humans doing their work. It's all humans. And if you could automate those kind of tasks, also in Japan, because Japan has a good car industry, a good truck industry,
Mm.
then there would be a lot of things where you could still employ robots. The other thing in Japan is you have a lot of monotsukuri, so small companies that make things. And you have a lot of SMEs, and a lot of them want to use robots. But currently, it's still too hard for them to use robots. And they don't produce a million times the same item.
Too
They
hard from a technical
from a
standpoint?
technical perspective. So they produce something in the morning, then something different in the afternoon. And to set up the robot for a new task is difficult for them. And they don't have an engineer that can program the robot. So they need something that's very easy to use. It would be kind of easy task, like just taking things from one place to the other and putting it in a machine and so on.
Mm.
But it needs to be very easy to set up. And then you could automate it with robots, for example. And there are so many SMEs, and also these small SMEs, they're all over in Japan. They are not only in Tokyo. And they also have very hard times finding people continuing their business. And Japan does have a lot of knowledge in how to do like these amazing things.
Mm.
And it could get lost if there is nobody taking over that work. And so maybe robots could be a solution also there.
Nice. Yeah, we had a meeting with a friend of ours who wants to start a business around that, like literally supporting this kind of companies. And through that, there's digital transformation and I guess supporting through robotics application. And what you do with XELA Robotics, like making it easier and easier to be used, is the solution, I guess, right? Because that's the thing. You can have the best technology ever, but if it's super hard to use, super hard to set up, like people will still not use it, right? It has to
Yes.
be smooth.
And in that case, it would be also maybe, especially now, there are some tasks which are still too difficult for robots. But so it would be the best would be that humans and robots work together. And so this SMEs, they have very hard times getting people because some of the work is just so terrible. But if then the robot would take over the most terrible part of the work, and the human could focus on the little bit more interesting part, then people would be more happy to work for those SMEs as well.
True. Makes sense. I want to ask you two last questions, Alex. One is, what's the kindest thing someone ever has done for you?
Oh, I don't know. Um, a lot of people have done a lot of nice things to me in my life. So I don't know. It would be very hard to point out only one thing. Sorry,
Point one, a special one to me.
a special one. I don't know. When I started the company, we really had a. It was not easy, but then with my co-founders and colleagues, they we put in hard hours. We they in the beginning the salary was not amazing, and we did it together.
The hard times in the early days.
Yes.
And what's the best advice you have ever received?
What's the best advice I've ever received? I mean, not everybody is always going to like you, and especially when you do something different, even if it's amazing, if you come up, then some people will hate it. It doesn't matter if it's the most amazing thing in the world. Just being different sometimes causes problems, and so you shouldn't care about it. And people told me that, and yeah, just don't care. You cannot make everybody happy.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Awesome, Alex. Absolute pleasure. I hope we touched on everything, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me today. It was very nice. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.